Viv staying with us while we move on to talk about, we haven't mentioned it yet, that Business Connection and Telkom deal. And Hardin Ratshisusu is the Acting Deputy Commissioner at the Competition Commission to talk about the Telkom BCX deal. Good evening to you, Hardin. You've approved this deal with some qualification, but it doesn't look like those qualifications are serious. What were you looking at here, and what did you have to consider?
Yeah, what we did look at, I think you'll recall that the competing authorities in 2007 looked into this transaction and it was blocked. So we really needed to look at it very, very carefully. What we did focus on was the impact it has on competition. The main markets that we looked at were where BCX is primarily active in. And the links that you find there are primarily vertical. So it was a vertical assessment looking at the potential for the merged entity to foreclose rivals of BCX downstream. So particularly given the market position of Telkom upstream at the wholesale list lines level. So Telkom is quite big there, so we did carefully assess those sort of linkages.
So Telkom has what I think is often called the last mile. It's got that underground network which other operators ultimately need at some point. It's like the little bottleneck, isn't it, Viv?
Yes, the local loop unbundling, I think, is something that's been on the tech scene for a while now. And of course, I mean, this doesn't quite affect that because it's a different kind of business model. But I do think that, you know, in terms of regulations in South Africa, Telkom has been holding us back by most estimates out there in terms of, you know, just how quickly we've been, for instance, on things like, you know, freeing up frequency, etc. When it comes to Telkom, beyond just the competition issues surrounding BCX, what are the issues that you guys consider with regards to Telkom as being the monopoly supplier of effectively fixed lines in this country, and especially with Neotel right now basically off the market with that takeover deal? What do you foresee in terms of, like, you know, other entrants into the market at the moment?
Yeah, what we did, I think that's a very, very important point, because access is critical for vans who are operating downstream. So what we did there was through this transaction, if you recall, the competition authorities settled with Telkom a very long-standing case where they'd agreed to a transfer pricing regime which was to endure until 2018. So we have expanded that, because when you look at that settlement, it's really making very significant impact on the markets. So if you look at it, a lot of vans are able now to access, you know, the upstream products and so forth. So we have now expanded this to include fiber. And this is where a lot of players downstream were quite concerned about access. And if you look at it, we say, which is very important, that Telkom must not discriminate downstream players relative to its retail operations. So there must be that pass-through. We talk about bundling. There must be transparency. If they bundle, they must be able to show to the users what each component of the bundle costs. And that is what we would really like to see. And that, I think, would empower the consumers downstream to make a choice, will empower the vans, who, by the way, the conditions are meant to protect, to be able to detect if Telkom is contravening the conditions.
Of course, you have to be careful. Once the deal is done, you can't undo it again. The competition authorities also take an interest in jobs. It's not just competition. Now here, the jobs impact doesn't seem to be too great. The announcement talked about 60 jobs over 3 years. Okay, for those 60 jobs, that's important. But this doesn't seem to be a major factor in your approving the deal.
Yes, I think we are quite focused on employment. It's very important in our assessment. But in this case, I think even these numbers, at least from the party submissions, they are not definite. So if you look at it, they're going to be staggered over 3 years. They should not exceed 20 in a given year. So that is where we are. But you are right. I think we think the condition as we have it addresses that part of the deal.
More broadly, I mean, the competition in the sector, it's very hard for new players to come into the telecom sector. You've got the two giants, Vodacom and MTN. Cell C hasn't really dented that duopoly, has it? It does still seem that Telkom, with its particular privilege with the fixed line network and the other big two, are you concerned that It's not competitive enough. For example, with termination rates, I always wonder why we have to pay them at all. You know, why don't they just scrap them?
Well, I think the regulator, ICASA, is really making some progress there, and I think you can see with the sort of recent introduction of the new termination rates, we are seeing, I think, maybe better pricing, you know, going forwards and so forth. But we are, as the competing authorities, concerned about the state of competition generally in our telco sector.
Yep. One more question there.
Just speaking of competition in the consumer, I mean, recently we had almost everybody raise, it's called tariffs effectively. I think all the mobile operators raised them a bit, especially for contract customers. I mean, is that something you guys have looked at carefully? I know you're looking at the retail sector, but I mean, have you looked at something like this in the mobile sector?
Well, I think the mobile, we are looking at it through the other deals. I think there's Vodacom, a Neotel deal we are looking at. We're looking at MTN Telkom, that roaming arrangement. So we're still looking into that. But I think there are things that happen along the lines. I mean, companies respond to certain conditions, market conditions, and so forth. So prices rise. We do not immediately react to sort of spades here and there, but it's a market that's under our spotlight. Yeah.
Well, Hardin, thanks for coming in. That is Hardin Ratshisusu talking about that BCX Telkom deal. The market obviously already discounted it. Telkom down by just over 1% on the day today. The effect will be that Business Connection will delist completely and be taken over completely by Telkom.